For me, the part of bonsai that really matters is the practice. It's the activity of bonsai. It's doing bonsai. It's watering bonsai. It's sorting out the branches and arranging them in the best possible position to keep the tree healthy and to make the tree look attractive. And it's carving. I could not possibly estimate the number of hours that I've spent in the last 40 years carving, but it's a lot. And there's something about that activity that is just so amazing. And a part of it is learning what's inside the tree as we peel away the outer layers. But part of it is getting an idea and making it come to life by carving. I have no idea how much time has passed when I carve. It's as if time is standing still. And I won't say I'm at one with the tree because I think that sounds like nonsense. But I will say it's a very unusual and very special feeling. And so it is the practice of bonsai that's way more important to me than the result. It is way more important than anything else. And I love it. I am here today in my workshop with this amazing Eastern White Cedar. Um, it turns out that this was a foundation planting at a house in Frankfort, Michigan, and I managed to talk the property owner out of the tree. Actually, there were three of them forming a hedge, and my daughter and I dug them up just over a year ago. And I put the tree directly into an oversized bonsai pot, not this one, but a larger one. And I noticed that it produced incredible root growth in just a single season. So it's tail end of summer right now here in Michigan, and this tree has been in a new pot for another season, and it's ready to go. I want to say a few things about collecting trees and Yamadori. Of course, the most exciting thing that you can find is a tree in the wild that's hundreds of years old and has spectacular dead wood. But in the case of a tree like this was grown as part of a hedge. Now, it had no particularly interesting characteristics except for the base, and it was kind of leaning toward the light, which gave it a slanting appearance, also very nice. And I'm working with the wood in a very traditional way. I'm using carving tools such as this Makita die grinder with a burr on it. And I do this knowing that there are many other ways to carve. It's very popular now to pay very careful attention to the fibers of dead wood and create something that is very natural, using only what was already there. But in this case, the wood itself had no particular interest. It was simply pruned as a shrub all these years, so there were none of the kinds of stresses that you get in bogs. I mean, it really in many ways had no interest at all. So what I've done here is I've reverted to sort of the old style of carving, using burrs and router bits and things like that. And I'm creating shapes that I think go with the flow of the trunk. I'm not paying a whole lot of attention to what was there already in the wood, but instead I'm imposing my own ideas on it. So this tree, I think, based on the age of the home and based on other things that I can see, such as the growth rings in some of the areas where I've made big cuts, I think it's around 80, maybe 90 years old, something like that. So it's old, but it's not ancient. And this is all part of my journey back to bonsai. I am rebuilding my collection, and because of my age, I really want quick results. And I know bonsai is about time and bonsai is about patience. However, I'm very impatient. And so I'm looking for opportunities to create fine bonsai in a very short span of time. And looking at this tree, I got the feeling that now is as good a time as any to set the structure. I know the roots are healthy. There's a lot of growth. It's kind of disorganized right now, but I will put it into position, and that will allow me to build a more refined bonsai from what's here. So I'm going to spin it around for you, and hopefully you can see some of the dead wood that I've carved. One half of the trunk seemed to me that it needed to be exposed. So this whole thing was alive. There was no dead wood on it, and I stripped bark, and I did the best job that I could following the obvious musculature of the plant. So I tried to follow the flow lines of the tree, and what I have here is, I think, really quite extraordinary for something that is not a wild collected tree. So there's an opportunity, I suppose, for this to become the front. I personally like the other side, and when I style it, I will make those final decisions. Bonsai have a front and bonsai have a back, but it's always important to create a design where every part of the tree looks good. Let's talk about styling. I think I'm going to get a very interesting looking tree out of this. You can see there's a tremendous flow in this direction. Most of the branches only come from a couple of points on the tree. There's one section here where there are two main branches coming out, and then there's another section here where on one side of the tree you have three branches, and then on the immediately opposite them there are two branches coming out. They're almost attached to each other at the base, and then you have a couple more branches just slightly above that. I can't apply any of the so-called rules to this tree. I have an obligation to design the tree in such a way so that the foliage captures sunlight. And what that means is, it means you don't put one piece of foliage over the top of another and block it. you have to style your tree so that your foliage pads each capture light. And it turns out that doing that and shaping the tree in a sustainable way is a large part of what we consider creating beauty. The beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but beauty is also in nature. When we see shapes, when we see trees, when we look at living things, there are certain characteristic shapes that we believe and that seem natural, and bonsai have to follow those kinds of rules. They're not written rules. They're really unwritten rules. And so this is going to tell a little bit of a story with the branches flowing in this direction. It's going to look somewhat windswept, although I keep thinking that I might put a little bit of foliage over here as a sort of a counterbalance. All of the stress of the tree is on this side because that's where I've killed all of the wood. I've taken the bark off and carved it, and so it's telling a story of stresses coming from this side, and you could say that would be wind, although then you have these deadwood projections headed straight toward where the wind might be coming from. If you spend a lot of time near lake shores, near the ocean, you will see that trees actually do have a tendency to grow toward the wind, and when that happens, they grow out and up, and then eventually the branches may die. There may just be too much stress. But so this is going to tell a story. If it doesn't tell a story, then it won't really be a successful bonsai. So anyway, that's what I'm going to do. I've got these long branches, and you can hopefully you can see that there's almost nothing growing on this. I'm going to have to foreshorten them by creating sort of a zigzag in the line, and I can do that with heavy wires. It's not impossible. Once I sort this out with the carving, then what I will do is I will apply some lime sulfur so that the dead wood doesn't look blonde and new, but it will look whitish, sort of a bony white, and it'll look very old. And that gives you a better way to differentiate the live tissue from the dead tissue. And so I'm in the middle of the carving process right now, and I'm going to go ahead and do some carving, and then I'll be coming back later. And once I've got that carving kind of sorted out, I will apply the lime sulfur, and then once I've applied the lime sulfur and that has taken, then I'm going to sort out the branches. And you don't have to do this in one day. Believe me, we wait as much time as we have to. And like I said before, I'm impatient. I don't like waiting, so I don't wait any longer than I think I have to. But these are not. It's not easy to put the branches in place. It takes a fair amount of skill. I'm not saying I necessarily have the requisite skill. I've just been doing it for a long time, and I kind of have an idea of what I want to do, and hopefully it'll work out. So I finished applying lime sulfur. In the beginning, it looks yellow. The liquid itself is orange. It smells like sulfur. It's really pretty nasty stuff. But what happens is, after it dries, the yellow disappears. It's replaced by a bony white that emphasizes the beauty of the dead wood, and it emphasizes the difference between the live and the dead tissue. So I'm going to wait a while for this all to dry, and when it does dry, it will be, like I said, bony white. And then I'm going to return, and I'm going to wire the tree, set the structure. I'm pretty excited about the way this is starting to look. I'm pretty happy about the way this turned out. I'll spin it around for you, but let me just say, I think I was able to achieve the foliar movement in this direction. I don't really view it as a windswept, but it has a lot of those characteristics. And obviously there's been some kind of a trauma coming from this direction. So there's very little growth over here, except for growth that I'm just using really to kind of balance. Obviously the foliage needs to fill in, and it will. This is a vigorous variety of white cedar. I'm not really sure what the name of it is. It's not the native, but it does grow very vigorously. And so I think in just a year, I'll have this padded out pretty well. There were a number of issues as I was working on it, as I was wiring. I discovered I had a couple of branches I didn't need, so those came off. And I have a lot of what people might call spaghetti, where it's all tangled up, and I've made a lot of zigzags in the branches. But all of this is done to compress the tree, to foreshorten it and give it a profile more like a white cedar would have in nature. So I'm pretty happy with it. Here, I'll spin it around for you. It's one of these trees that I was very excited to get it, and then I had no idea what I was going to do with it, and I just stared at it day after day, and just a few days ago I realized it was time to make a move, and so here is the result.